This project brings the work of 20th century British architect and pedagogue Cedric to a consideration of educational thought. More than 20 years following his death, Price's archetypal radicality has outlasted its 1960s origins, and yet, paradoxically, his legacy remains largely static. Although academic literature maintains reverence for Price's architectural oeuvre, formal investigations regarding its pedagogical value have yet to take shape. This study endeavors to counter the historical marginalization of Price's contributions to the field of architecture via examination of his teachings within conventional Western schools of design. This project follows in the path of recent writings which have offered new interpretations and analyses of Price of an interdisciplinary nature. These returns are multivalent, multifaceted, and as one may expect, heterogeneous rereadings of Cedric Price. And whilst not possible to synthesize each study fully here, these analyses signify collective and discernible shift away from normative strands of interpretive study regarding Price. Subjects of interest include his influence within fields of architectural theory, contemporary culture, and cybernetics, amongst others. That Price is being re-examined within the field of architecture and outside of it surely indicates there remains within his vast oeuvre knowledge yet to be unearthed. And yet, despite such scholarly progressions, there remains a dearth of research regarding his value within the current educational arena. Primary focus of this project lies upon Price's teachings during the 1967 Design Fete at Rice University in Houston, Texas. A secondary investigation involves Price's subsequent scheme for a fully decentralized, high-tech, open-access school for higher learning entitled Adam. The intent of this project is twofold. It endeavors a nuanced reconsideration of Price's Adam within the current pedagogical arena. Secondly, it attempts to illustrate how Price's pedagogical principles may be utilized within design-oriented educational practices of the digital age. The concept of the Rice Design Fete was conceived by William Caudill, chairman, and Bill Lacey, associate chairman, of the Department of Architecture at Rice University. The inaugural Design Fete took place in 1962. Held again in 63, 65, and 67, the Design Fetes represented, above all else, experiments and experience. The Design Fetes, or charrettes, paired notable architects with outstanding students of architecture. Each architect was assigned a brief and a team of 4 to 6 students of Rice University and otherwise. Working in groups and accompanied by various consultants, each fete comprised all-hour learning sessions within a highly concentrated, intense 2-week period. In partnership with the Educational Facilities Laboratories, the charrette of 1962 addressed problems regarding the inaccessibility of adult education in America. A subsequent publication, pictured here on the right, documented 10 resultant schemes for new learning facilities nationwide. Ideas within the book would advance architectural ideology as to what a community college could endeavor to be. Throughout its various inceptions, the Rice Design Fetes explored ways by which thinking outside the box could lead to the betterment of the economic and social landscape of 1960s America. Imaginatively progressive and irrefutably visionary, the schemes devised within the Rice Design Fetes offered inventive architectural solutions for real-world problems. The fourth installment of the Rice Design Fete, known as RDF4, was directed by William T. Kennedy, who is pictured on the leftmost position of the photograph shown here. The event was once again sponsored by the Educational Facilities Laboratories, or EFL. Established by the Ford Foundation in 1958, the EFL functioned as an independent research organization. Its intent was to stimulate exploration, as well as enable schools and colleges to maximize the quality and utility of formal learning environments. The designated theme for RDF4 was New Schools for New Towns, A popular concept at the time, the working aim was to amalgamate the design of new cities with experimental educational approaches. In accordance with the proposed subject at hand, the EFL would iterate that the value of a new town was in its absence of tradition. Free from historical convention, a new town held the capacity to implement the latest ideas of technology, communication, education, and community planning without concern for what used to be. The idea that technology could bear influence within current educational practice played a prominent role throughout the FET. An underlying objective explored ways by which new technologies could be harnessed so as to foster innovative systems of learning. Another intention was to lessen the divide between education and life. The EFL would term this coming together as the, quote, intermix between the school and its community. This fusing of technology with learning formed new roots of innovative thinking that were, during this era of time, congruent with the theories of Rayner Banham and Marshall McLuhan. Such thinking would be echoed by Price himself. By the mid-1960s, Price had already held 7 years' experience of part-time teaching at London's Architectural Association. In 1966, Price's National School Plan presented a critical review of the rigidity of Britain's architectural educational system. Just prior to the FET, Price had completed his designs for a deconstructed, mobile university scheme that was his Potteries Think Belt. As is evident by the letter of correspondence shown here, it was in fact Price's Think Belt that put him within the radar of VFL's vice president, Jonathan King. Holding lineage with preceding charrettes, RDF4 was upheld as a transnational event. The charrette embraced a cross-pollination of thought only possible from the gathering of architects from around the world. Archived correspondence illustrates Kennedy's formidable attempts at garnering notable architects from around the world. 6 practicing architects would eventually partake in the 12-day event, which would convene on the campus of Rice University from June 4th to 16th, 1967. The written brief that Price received prior to his participation at RDF4 was written by educational consultants John Terrell and Albert Canfield. This document, the first 3 pages of which are shown here, detail the task that lay ahead of Price and his team of students. Developed in part with funding from the Federal Atomic Research Facility, the new town of Atomia operated as a satellite city and was situated on a major radial freeway. Albeit fictional, Atomia was designated a location 30 miles southwest of Chicago and comprised a population of 220,000 educated persons whose livelihoods were all in some way, shape, or form connected with that of the nuclear industry. The citizens of Atomia would be particularly attuned to developments in technology, and as a result, recreational, cultural, and educational offerings within the town would evolve accordingly. The prescribed educational plan for Atomia comprised educational nodes, which would serve limited population groups in relatively independent settings. Each node would be stocked with materials fit for learners of various age groups. While some nodes would offer opportunities for self-instructional learning, others relied upon an intermittent teaching faculty. All educational nodes within Atomia would be open to the public 24 hours a day. Propelled by the exchange of talk as valid methodological construct, this project embraces a dialogic approach to research from which a deeper understanding of the subjects at hand may be gained. Oral and social discourse by way of collective conversations, interviews, and word-of-mouth storytelling are relied upon as primary means of resource. Written discourse, including archived letters of correspondence, facsimile memos, drawings, and other paper ephemera, provide supporting and corroborating material of import. This project began on the campus of Rice University. Whilst there, I was fortunate enough to speak with Will Kennedy, as well as with 2 former students of the 67 Design FET, Professor Danny Samuels of the Venturi team and architect Jim Gwynn of the Price team. The accompanying images shown here are taken from the book New Schools for New Towns, which documented the various schemes of RDF4 and was published by the university in 1970. Professor Emeritus Danny Samuels recalls the mania of the 12-day fete. At the time, he was a sophomore at Rice, designated student leader, as well as chauffeur to Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown. Samuels constructed an enormous plasticine model for Venturi and recalls transporting it across the Rice campus. He also recalls Denise trialing Charles Colbert's prototypal shoulder corral, a takeaway learning device intended to churn out educational material via various forms of high-tech multimedia. Throughout the 12 days, two happenings remain prominent in Danny's mind. He recalls the onset of the Israeli Six-Day War, its dominance throughout news broadcasts, and its subsequent abrupt end. Secondly, Mr. Samuels remembers the revelation brought forth by the release of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album, how Cedric's team had in their possession a record player, and how one of his students sat in the corner to play the vinyl continuously, the music permeating the communal studio space. Jim Gwynn was generous in his retelling of his memories of Price as his teacher. At his core, Gwynn is a storyteller. He is able to deliver meaning via tale-telling without overtly declaring his intentions for doing so. His stories encourage further navigation of thought. Gwynn's chief recollections involve the energy level of the fete, the continuous conversations that took place amongst his colleagues as well as with Price himself. As for the pedagogy of Cedric Price, Gwynn attests the learning process was above all else a dialogue. The magnanimity of Price's ideas are embedded in Gwynn's memory of him. Unlike some fellow participants, Price's scheme pursued the design of structures rooted in flexibility and adaptability. This lack of a, quote, fixed solution was, as Jim recalls, unique to Price's team. In summary, there was a decidedly democratic nature to both Price's pedagogical methods and his designs. Following RDF4, Price went on to erase the new town upon which his fictional educational scheme was based. He cited that the concept of a finite town, totally conceived at a single moment in time, was intellectually derelict and socially irresponsible. Alas, when Price's Atom Project appeared in the May 1968 What About Learning edition of AD Magazine, Atomia was nowhere to be found. What remained in its place were the fragmentary kit-of-parts frameworks that symbolized Price's own ideas for technology-driven, free-range, and self-paced learning. Atom's components form a broad system of learning facilities, most of which are ephemeral and capable of being incorporated into existing facets of the everyday urban streetscape. This catalog of parts could seemingly be installed as well as dismantled with any town, new or old. The town brain would serve as a central production and servicing hub. Similar to a supercomputer, the brain would act as both processor and data bank for the community. Rapid transit servicing would employ computerized teaching panels on city buses and trains, forming one component of Price's mobile learning network. Finally, the life conditioner box would stand as a building of the simplest form, offering rooms for intensive learning and cinematic showcases. The life conditioner tent, on the other hand, would comprise smaller-scale workshops, laboratories, and experimental spaces. The intrinsic generosity of Price's atom rests in its indeterminate form, its ability to metamorphose and thus offer different meanings at different points in linear time. And so, how does one find the value of atom within the digital age and in relation to architectural education? Atom's kit of parts aesthetic wielded a fully flexible, deconstructed learning environment. The scheme's vehicular learning pods, self-service kiosks, and hologram-esque learning screens epitomized Pricean ideals of flexibility, adaptability, and democracy within learning. Over half a century has passed since Atom, and there remains, despite great advancements in technology, a bricks-and-mortar rigidity within the space of architectural education. Today, and within Britain, the regime of architectural education remains one of progressive enclosure. Metaphorically, Adam's kit of parts may be interpreted as a 21st century dismantling of this regime. In the philosophical sense, one may draw parallels with dialogic, deconstructivist, and post-structuralist theory. Lastly, Price's defense of Adam's eventual obsolescence signifies how architectural education must evolve to keep pace with technological advancements and societal need. In the year directly following the FET, Price would once again collaborate with educational consultant John Terrell. The resultant project, the Detroit ThinkGrid, would provide a template for an open-access responsive learning system for Detroit residents of diverse ages and capabilities. Such ideals of Pricean free thinking would be reconstructed in Polyarch, created in the 1970s and reborn in 2010. Polyarch entailed a traveling bus that would enable students to make learning stops at various universities throughout the United Kingdom. Price would go on to give visiting lectures at Rice. In 1992, he returned to Houston to teach an autumn semester postgraduate design studio. Part of Rice's, quote, British Fly-In series, the brief involved a reimagining of a void space within the grounds of the Texas Medical Center. The final images shown here divulge the effect of this dialogic pedagogy and comprise a selection of feedback forms penned by the students of his 1992 studio. To end, Price's dialogic pedagogy begets a much overdue rethink of current design studio methodologies. Pricean pedagogy, as presented in this short exploration, promotes the cultivation of dialogue as a means of knowledge exchange free from traditional teacher-student hierarchies.